Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Alan Barry Labakan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a new guest on my show today with Sean Kuhn from the Dolly Varden. They've done very well for quite a significant time. I've actually been watching the project for several years, actually, and it's really had quite a change since Sean and his team took over. And excited to have you on, Sean. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me here, Alan.
Oh, no worries. I guess I'm going to pull up the screen here.
Okay.
And can you see my screen okay, Sean?
Yes, I can.
Pretty spectacular results a few days ago, 26.74 grams per ton of gold. Is that equivalent? I think it is. Uh,
No, that's just heads up gold.
Heads up gold over 14.76 meters, including 122 grams of gold over 2.85 meters at Homestake Silver deposit. So, why don't we start out by, I mean, you've got several deposits on this project, right, Sean? Let's start with that context.
Yeah, so we're up in the Golden Triangle, and we're sort of at the southern end of the Golden Triangle. So, you know, the main triangle is centered around Eskay Creek, Premier, Bruce Jack, and so we're south of the Stewart Township. And we started with the old Dolly Varden Silver Mine. Alan, if you go to the homepage, there's a corporate presentation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. I
Yeah,
was looking for a map there, Sean. You
yeah,
caught me.
I caught
Uh,
you. So if you just go to the homepage, there's a corporate presentation that'll come up, and uh, and then I can sort of walk you through. There it is.
Alrighty.
And so the strategy was, and if I think it's page three, that'll give you the regional map of the area. And we've got some bullet points on there that I'd happy to speak towards, which is this. Look, the Golden Triangle um, has been known for over 100 years, right? But in the last 30 years, there's been 1.2 billion ounces of silver discovered, 150 million ounces of gold discovered. So, what this map shows you is if you look at that kind of light green, that represents the Jurassic Age Hazelton Formation, where the big mines are set in. So this is like starting in the way north, Red Chris, and then yeah, Red Chris there, and Newmont's operating there. And then if you go, you've got the Skeena Eskay Creek, yeah. And then you've got KSM Bruce Jack. So you got Seabridge and Newmont. Actually, you know what
My audience knows this Bruce Jack name quite well because I picked Pretium when they were about $3 a share and followed it right through to the takeover at around $19 a share.
Yeah, I think the takeout price was about $3 billion,
Yeah.
2.9 billion. And I gotta hand it to people like Bob Quartermain
Yeah.
and Walter Coles. And this is recently. You can go back and talk about like Ron Netolitzky and some of the other legends of the Triangle. But look, what I'm trying to do for Dolly, and so we've kind of imposed that blue color, which identifies our claims. And then if you scroll down to the next slide, we don't need to talk about why silver. Maybe go to the next one, unless you want to talk about why silver,
I
Alan.
think we can talk about that towards the end there,
Okay,
Sean.
sure. So, I wouldn't mind looking at this one though, because a lot of people talk about rocks, right? And you're talking rocks and stocks, but on the stock side of it, there's 10 stocks to play in the primary silver producer category. So if you want silver exposure, you choose between Hecla, First Majestic, Pan America, Aya Silver. There's about 10 companies. Now, outside of those 10, there are three companies, and we highlight who they are right here. Abra, Vizsla, and Dolly. And what sets Dolly apart from its peers is where the project is located, safe jurisdiction, right? So if you scroll down, I wouldn't mind zooming in.
Oh,
Um,
here, I know what to do here. It's cutting off a bit of my screen, so oh, wrong way. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, sure. Look, this just talks about how we've built the business. We've built the business through bringing capital. So I've gone out and I've been very lucky that people have supported me. So we've brought in a lot
By
of
the
money.
way, Sean, when did you take over?
So do you see there it says 2020
Yeah,
right there? So I came in, and the reason I came in is I wanted to get exposure to silver. I was convinced that silver was going to go on a pretty big run, and I just thought this was a great company based on the grade, based on the location. I thought that if I brought some money to the table, we could do some acquisitions, and maybe if we're lucky, the geology would cooperate, and maybe we can expand and extend some of the known deposits. What I had never dreamed about was some of the discoveries the scientists have made. They've, you know, I'm even surprised by the numbers that we've come up with. But I gotta say, Alan, if I go back 5.5 years to where it started for Dolly. And if I were to say who is the one person responsible for, actually there were so many though. There wasn't just one person, but I got to say there's one person who's on my team, and that's Rob McLeod. And Rob was the guy that without his help, his guidance, his mentoring, we would have never launched. And there's been a lot of other people that I could point to,
I've
Phil.
known Rob for several years, very talented geologist and tied into the Golden Triangle through his family's heritage in the area. He's the third generation now of McLeod's in the Golden Triangle, and I guess I got to say I kind of stole my name or borrowed it from uh, from Catherine McLeod Seltzer. She used to, I heard her once interviewed, and she said, "Yeah, I grew up around the dinner table talking about rocks and stocks." And yeah, it reminded me of my background. I worked for a large geological consulting firm for many years, and we used to sit around the corporate the table at lunch and talk about rocks and stocks. So that's the generation of my where my name of rocks and stocks came from. But yeah, the McLeod family is pretty much the Golden Triangle.
Well, yeah, and Catherine is being inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame in January. Her father, Don, was inducted a few years back. Her brother Bruce, who I had the pleasure of working around. I used to rent an office space in uh, right next to Sabina within the Sabina organization, and now, of course. B2 Gold has bought that project. And so it's a successful, it's one of the most successful Canadian mining families.
Yeah,
And, what people may not know though is it's a family. Like I remember bringing my wife and my kids to a Sabina Christmas party. And, they gave all the kids presents. And the culture that Bruce and Rob create for their companies is, I think, part of the reason that they have had so much success in their careers. And for
absolutely.
me, like I grew up in a business office where it was all about the numbers, right? It was all about the bottom line. It was all about the return of investment, which is super important because if you're not making investors money, and money is the oxygen of this industry, um, but the key is all the money in the world doesn't create wealth. And the biggest challenge I think we face as mining speculators and investors is access. If the community doesn't want you, if you're not good to the community and the environment, you're not getting off first base.
Not a chance.
So, I'm happy to kind of what I want to show you. If we scroll down a little bit,
Well, folks, here's so Sean took over. It was about a $20 million valuation. Now it's a $561 million valuation. Along the way, they've gone to done a lot of drilling, raised a lot of money, put that into the ground, 200,000 meters drilled, and they've graduated to the New York Stock Exchange as well as the Canadian Venture Exchange.
that's right. Yeah. And
Oh, there we go. I got ahead of the story, Sean.
you did. And you know what? And I'm glad we did that because, we trade about four times more volume on NYSE than we do on the venture now. And I think as I learn more about, like, this is new for me. This is the first time I've taken a company to the big board in the US. And so I'm still learning about how to get out and utilize that listing. And, I'm spending more time in the US and spending more time in front of US centric investors, and it's paying off. The fact that we're now doing four times the volume there. But, my goal, Alan, is and my understanding is 92% of capital in North America is in the US.
Absolutely.
92%. Over 50% of the world's capital is in the US. And so,
Something that you're tapping into there that's really exciting for me, Sean, is that I watch the Canadian listed companies that have dual listings, and I'm seeing the same 4x to 10x kind of volume. And I find that really encouraging because it tells me that the generalists in the United States are starting to dip their toe into the gold and silver companies, and that's a very exciting trend.
well, and if you think about silver, and we showed you the slide about the scarcity in terms of how many companies there are and whatnot, and there's just a handful, right? Like that one right there. Like, so if you're a US investor, and like you know, I'm pretty religious about this stuff. It's all I think about, 7 days a week. Like I've just really become a rocks and stocks geek. And so, as I've studied history and as I've gotten into this stuff, what I now believe is if you go back and you really understand, well, why gold? Why is gold $4,000 an ounce in US dollars? Why is silver trading higher than it ever has in the history? And so is gold. What's happening? And I think it all comes down to we're at a moment right now in time where investors' confidence in governments, the system, they're worrying about debt, they're worrying about the sustainability of the current monetary system. And this has happened in 2011. It's happened in 1979. It's happened over and over in history in Britain, in France, in Spain, in Italy. Like you just go through it and through it and through it, and it's happening right now in America. It's happening all over the world. But the reason I bring all this up and I bring up the New York Stock Exchange is when they made it illegal for US citizens to own gold. There was I believe it was called the Confiscation Act,
Yep,
uh,
1930.
something along those lines.
Yep.
But when they never made it illegal, they thought about it. They had the legislation. They never passed it. They were going to outlaw silver as well, but they never did. And so what I'm convinced of is there's a group of Americans, mainly males, aged 40 to 80, that have they refer to them in a derogatory way. They call them, the silver bugs, right? But
Gold bugs, yeah.
the particularly on the silver side, right? Like there's a group of people that really are silver enthusiasts,
Yeah.
And I think for me, getting the shares on NYSE, and I really liked what you said. You know how you said that you're watching these companies and some of them are four and some of them are 10x more volume in the US. Well, my goal is 9x because my thinking is if 90% of capital is in the US, we should be trading, at least 9 times more volume on the NYSE than we are in Canada. And so that's the goal. We're not there yet, but if you scroll down on
Before
the
we do, I wanted to throw something at you. Now that we've seen gold and silver get into record territory, I think a lot of people have kind of got afraid of heights. And why I'm not afraid of heights is because I look at what's driving this. And it gets back to something I call the death spiral of debt. And now they've got 38 trillion plus of debt in the United States. The cost of servicing that debt is over $1 trillion a year. And I don't think there's any stopping that. And that's why I call it a death spiral of debt. And fundamentally, what I think has happened is that they've broken the fiat currency and debt system. And that process really started in the 1970s. And it took 50 years to break the currency and fiat currency and debt system. And therefore, I think it's going to take decades actually to fix it. And part of fixing it is gold and silver. And now we've also got stagflation kicking in. So your goal of 9x, I think, is maybe a lot faster than many people think.
Yeah, well, I totally 100% agree with everything you just said. And yeah, I believe that we are reintroducing, gold to the system. And there's different times in history where it's more relevant and less relevant. And, we went through a period after the big rise, once gold was freed, there was a set price. Once it was finally freed in 1971, and you saw a big move, from $35 to 800, we spent the next 2 decades digesting that move. And part of the reason we stayed, call it at an average price of 300 US dollars, throughout the 80s and 90s, is because a lot of the central banks, in order to pay for those deficits, in order to pay for all this stuff, they were selling their gold. So you had countries like England, countries like Canada that were selling all the gold they could, keeping the price down. And it was people like Eric Sprott and Frank Giustra who wrote papers in the late 90s saying, hey, once these central banks run out of all their gold, those who want to sell, the price is going to go up. And sure enough, throughout the 2000s, you saw a tenfold increase in the price of gold.
Yeah.
You saw $200 gold turn into $2,000 gold. And once again, we needed to digest that move as more desperate people in desperate places needed to sell gold. And Rick Rule says, cure for low prices is low prices, a cure for high prices is high prices. But I would say one thing to your point about how did you describe it? Like, the ceiling or floor, or you're not afraid of how
Oh,
did you,
afraid of heights.
afraid of heights? Okay. Well, I'll tell you, for me, there's a bit of, I don't know if the word's a disillusion, or there's something that's happened here because the height, we're only on the fifth or sixth floor. Like, and because we were underground at parking level 10, and now we've merely come up above ground and we're a few stories up, yeah, maybe it looks like we're high compared to where we were, but I really believe that the end of this thing ends when the deficit is and the budget's balanced. There are no more deficits, and
So
we have
you're
a
making a case for never, John.
well, look, I think that I think austerity and what history has taught us is that there will come a day of reckoning where we'll stop living beyond our means. And
I just don't see anybody that is interested in doing that in government on the left or the right. I don't
but I
see
see,
any across the globe.
but this is my fundamental belief. I don't think ultimately the government sets the interest rate, right? Like I know everyone's watching the Fed like they're the Wizard of Oz, right? But the reality, the way I see the world is you can manipulate something for a long time,
Absolutely.
but ultimately the truth and what's right and gravity takes hold. And I think when that happens, the market, like if I want to be a lender, I will set the terms, right? And the government can intervene, but then you just get sort of that perversion that, comes out sideways. And where that perversions come out sideways is in asset bubbles. So you've got the unaffordability of food, housing, energy, and that's where this policy has led to a very, very difficult place. And it's because, the fundamentals of it all, we're not producing things. We've got a total financialized economy. And so I think some of the moves that some are trying to make to reshore, to bring things back, to do things in a more sustainable way is ultimately our way out of it. But I do agree with you. It's going to be painful. People are going to go kicking and screaming. And the sad thing, though, is, we live in a place where there's fresh air, there's an abundance. We have more than we need, yet people are suffering. And so I have hope and faith that with the right leadership, we will actually enter an era of tremendous prosperity. And I see us getting there. Um, and it just is going to require some really good leadership. But I think we're getting way off of the Dolly Varden topic.
Well, I don't mind doing that because I'm so unafraid of heights, Sean, that I've in 2024 I said that I think that gold will reach 20,000 within 10 years. And I've recently heard people like Frank Justra and Rick Rule say, well, be careful what you ask for, $10,000. But I would also say that they were saying the same thing about 3,000 and $4,000 gold. But why I want to see it so much higher is because that will tell me that the fix is starting to happen, the cure is starting to happen because it will put restrictions on the central bankers and on the politicians that they can't get away of. So it actually leads to more prosperity as far as I'm concerned, not some sort of, Armageddon.
It's interesting. I was just like listening to the radio yesterday. I think it was like Bloomberg or CNBC, and I had to do a double take because I heard the Dow had closed at 48,000 points.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the Dow for a long time, right? It's just not an index that, you know, what is it? There's 30 companies that make up the Dow. I just don't think it's a really good representation of anything. But anyways, what 48,000 Dow represents though is and this goes back to 20,000 gold, 40,000 gold, 100,000 gold. How can we even speculate on where a price of gold's going to go when we still are kicking that can down the road and they still keep printing and they keep still keeps and like
Well,
you
for me, Sean, it's a relative thing to the debt. Okay. Right now, the world is in 320-ish trillion dollars in debt. And the total valuation of gold it's less than 10% of that debt. And so I think what I'm getting at is if you back up the debt more significantly with gold, you're starting the healing process. And to get to those levels, that's why I'm talking about those big numbers, is because I think it's a sign that the healing process is happening. You're
Okay.
backing up the debt with more significantly with gold. And silver plays a role in that too, for me, because
Yeah.
silver has the beautiful combination of a monetary metal plus an industrial metal. And you've got this big deficit. And getting back to your silver, the concentration of the menu that investors have to choose from in the silver space is very, very minimal. And that's what gets the goosebumps going, Sean, is because like your thesis of, hey, let's get into silver, but now you're making some wonderful gold discoveries as well. And so I guess that's a good segue to get back on the track of the Dolly Varden story.
Yeah, and listen, that's a story that, you mentioned the drilling, you mentioned the money, but a big part of the story has been making acquisitions. So these are
Right.
three acquisitions we made in May. They
Yeah,
were
this Porter one really has me quite excited because that's an old VMS mine that was very lucrative even back when the prices were cheaper than they are now. So that one's got me excited. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about Kinskooch and Mountain Boy?
Sure. So Kinskutch was a project that was held by Hecla.
Okay.
And Hecla had acquired it and spent a fair bit of money exploring the property. And was run by Phil Baker for 23 years, and he was quite acquisitive, and he built quite a big company with many, many different projects. I think four operating mines and many other projects in the development pipeline. And he was quite active in giving his shareholders more exposure. So he would make investments like into Dolly Varden, and he had these big land holdings here, and he was a big believer in the area. Um, he is no longer the CEO of Hecla.
Right.
And so a new CEO came in 1 year ago. And, if you think back to May of this year, silver was below $25 an ounce.
Yep.
So I went out and I
And
listed
I
our,
think they were producing it for more than that or around that price. I
yeah,
can't
listen,
remember exactly, but
they've got one mine, Greens Creek, that is a very low cost producer where, it was the crown jewel of their operation. I believe it still is. And so I came to them at a time when silver was $25 and they were under new management and they were focused on paying down debts and selling non-core assets. So I bid them, and my argument to them was this: you already own 12% of the company.
okay.
Why don't you own a few percent more? So you're not selling Kinskutch, you're increasing your ownership in Dolly Varden. We'll focus on it. We'll make the expenditures. We'll take the knowledge from what we've learned at the adjacent Dolly and Homestake projects that we own and have successfully made discoveries on, and we'll apply that to Kinskutch. And
Wow,
so,
you attached like 5x your land package. This is all blue here, folks, is what the Kunskut is. And the purple is where Homestake, Dolly Varden, and Big Bulk is. So this excites me because I'm pretty knowledgeable about epithermal vein systems. I live in Mexico, Sean, and that's what all the mining of silver has been. And I know they come in clusters. And so adding that much land is quite an exciting thing.
And then the Porter deal, I know you know it, but I just want to highlight one thing. We were trading at roughly $2 an ounce on the ground for the resources that we had.
Hmm.
And Dolly Varden cut a deal at 8.5 cents per silver ounce. So we were trading it to buying it under 10 cents. And so I
Wow.
thought it was a smart deal. It only cost us $1 million in stock. And we gave our shareholders exposure to what was the richest pure silver mine in the Golden Triangle. Now the Mountain Boy deal, so they actually call the company MTB Metals now, but it's and the reason I wanted this one, and again, it was, relatively a low cost deal, 1.8 million in value for a company that used to have a $60 million market cap. Um, and again, we were in a depressed place where the owners of both Porter and Mountain Boy had share prices that were very low. Mountain Boy was trading at 1 or 2 pennies at the time.
Hmm.
And so I went to them and I said, look, we really wanted that Thea property, which is
This,
contiguous to Homestake.
so
And then
folks, here you see Thea in orange, and that attaches right on to up here, up above the homestake in Dolly Varden ground.
And Alan, I'll come back to Thea. So if you could scroll down now. Now I didn't just buy ground. We bought past producing mines, and that's what that slide that one there, it just highlights that, we had the Dolly Varden silver mine, which was the richest silver mine in the British Empire. We had the Torbrit mine, which was Canada's third largest primary producer when it was operating. And then we brought in Porter, Mountain Boy, and Esperanza. So we didn't just buy land, we bought past producing mines. Now, if you scroll down, you're right. It was a six-fold increase in prospective ground. And then if you scroll down one more,
Hold on, I want to show something, folks. Okay, so here was the original in purple. Here's all the attached on the southeast side, and here is north. And so now we can start to see, wow, look at all the ground, and you control that big piece of the right kind of rocks.
that's right. And you know what? Like this, all those deals were done in about a 10-day period in the month of May.
Holy moly.
And so, if you think about what went into executing that, it was something that in my head I've been planning for 5 years. And so what I did is I went to my board. I said, we got to go to the New York Stock Exchange. So we started working on that. We got listed on April 21st. The first acquisition was the first week of May. Second one was a couple of days later. The third one was a week after that. So we got our shares up. We did all share acquisitions. Everything that we've done here has been very deliberate. And it's been something that we've been planning for, 5.5 years.
And
If we
accretive.
super accretive. If we scroll down to the next one, this is the coolest one. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Now, when I started at Dolly, right where your cursor is, right on that is the Torbrit. And it's what's so interesting about this Torbrit is like this that sort of red jasper. And it's the Torbrit is the 53 million ounce silver deposit. It produced 19 million ounces. There's about 18.9. There's 35 million ounces left intact based on our last resource estimate. Now, when I came into Dolly, I asked the team, can you find another Torbrit? And we've been on the hunt for the next Torbrit. And what these images show, that one there you got your cursor on, well, that's from Thea. That's 20 kilometers away. That's the same looking rock that we've got at Torbrit that hosts a 50 million ounce deposit. Now, the next one over to your left is around the Wolf. Now, that is an assay that's pending from hole 470. And
Mhm.
Alan, regardless of what it runs, the fact that we're seeing the same looking rock and why it's so important, it's on the other side of the Central Valley Fault. So
Mhm.
we lost Torbrit. We're drilling, we're growing 35 million ounces. And then Where does it go? There's a
Faulted
fault.
off. Yeah.
Okay. We're on the other side of the fault. We hit it. Now, so that's exciting. Hole 470 is pending. If you
So
scroll down,
does your geologist think that was faulted up towards Wolf?
well, if you scroll down, wolf is a different animal. Okay. And I got Amanda Bennett there and her dog Tonks. And they're there because this was Amanda's idea. Amanda looked underneath that sediment cover that you see above the vein, and the wolf, and know what? No one in 100 years had ever done this. That host rock, the green, Hazelton volcanic sequence persists below the sediment cover. And we put out some results, and I'll go through the results a little later, but that's a vein that's wide, it's high grade, it's open. This is where you're going to see a lot of growth. So we're still figuring out the relationship between Torbert and Wolf. Okay. And we're
Hmm.
still trying to, and we really don't, we want to wait until we've got some assays from 470 and get more data before we put it all together. But if we scroll down,
But what's
five,
interesting to me about this, and folks, where you see the contact between sedimentary rocks and volcanic rocks is a pathway that the fluids that carry those metals can follow. And as you can see here, with these high grade, it's actually getting richer, deeper. 654 grams of silver equivalent, or silver, 1,000 grams over that's a kilo, folks, over 7 meters. Here in Mexico, the average, let's say, thickness of the veins are 2 to 5 meters, and you're looking at 300 to 400 grams, and those make for fabulous mines. So when you're looking at a kilo over 7 meters, 860, I mean, this is beautiful stuff. 10,000 grams over a meter. Wow, that's really impressive, especially how it's contouring along the contact of those two rock packages.
so Alan, I want you to scroll down 5 kilometers north. I want you to look at some of these numbers.
Wow.
This is that silver system goes silver gold on the left there at Homestake Silver. As you can see, 93 meters of 213 silver and
Oh,
1.74 grams of gold. So you look at some of those numbers, and then it transitions more to a gold zone
over here.
as you go up to hole 333, where you got 46 grams of gold over 25 meters.
Holy moly.
Those are good numbers, eh?
Those are eye openers. Those are better than good.
Yeah. No, we've been pretty, like I said, like when I
Look
said
at
when I
that, 46 grams over 25 meters. Holy moly. Oh, that's silver. Okay. Okay.
no, no, that's
Oh, no,
gold.
that's gold and silver. 70 grams of silver. The silver would pay for the gold.
Um,
Holy moly.
so what we set out to do it, and I think this is so important, like, what do you can have strategy, it's important to understand what we set out to do. What we set out to do was to grow the deposit. And then so this is the Wolf result, 1,400 grams of silver over 21 meters.
You know what's crazy? If I'm looking at this, this looks like you're still at the top of the system. You still got
Okay.
brecciation there. You're not into the primary just quartz. And look at native silver. Holy moly.
And then so that came out on September 2nd, that one there. That's like a 29,000 gram meter silver intercept.
Wow.
And then you go to this one here, which was October 1st. And on the back of this result, the market gave us $34 million at an average dilution of $7.40,
And look
which
at
is,
how undrilled it is to extend that gold. I mean, you're cutting it off here and basically two holes.
Yeah.
to extend that gold zone.
And then there's a whole area of space where that text is that's wide open. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's what I'm
all open.
getting at.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you stop here, let's say all of these didn't really touch the zone, you got two holes stepping down. Wow.
And so we zoom in here to the results that you were referencing when we first started the segment. Um, and so that rock is from Premier. It's from the 310 zone at the Premier, which is probably about 40 kilometers north of Homestake.
Hmm.
And look at how similar Homestake Silver looks to Premier.
So this is a sample and this is your core?
Yeah, so
Holy moly. So when I look at this, I see an epithermal vein with good check textures of crustiform, coliform textures that are indicative of a long-lived boiling zone system that those fluids kept on coming in over a long period of time. But you know something else, Sean? This still is indicative that you're at the top of the system, not into the system yet. This is crazy.
So what you've got on the next slide is the resource, which we're going to update. So you've got 64 million ounces of silver and a million
When
ounces.
was this last done, Sean?
So technically, it was done in 2023.
Oh,
However, it doesn't account for drilling that we did in 2020, 21, 22,
oh,
23, 24,
wow.
25. So there's probably at least 150,000 meters of drilling that have gone into the project that has not been accounted for. So,
Oh.
you're going to see conversion, you're going to see grade increase, you're going to see ounce increase, and that'll all come out, probably by March.
So, folks, that's not wishful thinking, what Sean just mentioned, because what you have to understand when a resource is done, the more density of drilling you have, the more accurate you can be in your resource. But when I look at this, I still use that old rule of thumb, Sean, about 100 million ounces basically gets you about 10 million ounces of annual production for 10 years, kind of an old rule of thumb. But you're already halfway there, and then you've drilled another 150,000, and some of that's infills, so you'll have a higher density of drilling.
And then, in addition to that, you've got a million ounces of gold that complements the silver.
Wow. So this is only gold, silver. Wow.
Silver's on the left, gold's on the right.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then I want to show you the next slide because I feel like, and you tell me, like, I say our philosophy, right? And you get the shareholders at the top, then you got the board, and then you've got management, right? So, and if you go to the next slide, it breaks down the ownership. Um, and so you don't often see an exploration company that's got 64 million in the bank that only has 14% of the shares in the hands of the retail. So I'm really proud of, the science. I'm really proud of the investors who've supported us. I'm really happy with the acquisitions we've made. And I feel like the hardest thing to do in our business is to launch. And we're up and going now, and the market's a little bit easier than it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm excited about, if you scroll down, that's just a little recap of some of the things we talked about when we did what. But if you go down to the next one, which is I think important,
Catalyst. Yeah.
you know, and there's something pretty vague there. Bullet point number 4, ongoing M&A due diligence, right? That's something where we have had a history. We've made 5 acquisitions. We made 3 in May, um, but we had acquired Homestake, we had acquired Big Bulk. We're still looking. We're a driller that's got 80 holes to report and we've had great results so far. We're a company that's got over $60 million in the bank. I feel like the team does a good job of getting out to the conferences and getting out on platforms like that and sharing the value proposition. And so I feel really, really good about what's in front of us here.
I don't blame you. With those kind of grades and those hits, that's pretty phenomenal stuff, Sean. And I think that you might just be on the top of the system still in some of these zones. And then you look at the clustering effect of epithermal veins and all the ground that you've got. You got, room to grow on what you know, and room to grow with what you don't know, and room to grow with the checkbook buying other companies. You got good, you got good paper there. Your paper is a good acquisition tool.
It's the culmination of you know the board, the advisors, the consultants, good rocks, supportive shareholders, and there's a little bit of luck involved in terms of timing.
Absolutely. Well, you couldn't have better luck than right now, Sean, and I think your luck's going to get even better.
And that's kind of unfortunate, right? Because we know, what's propelling these metal prices is it's not, rainbows and waterfalls.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so lots of upcoming stuff, lots of drill results. You could be putting results out until into the new year, it sounds like.
Yeah, historically, we've had years where we've reported even into February. I think we should have everything out by the end of January.
And you're in a nice part of the Golden Triangle where you can get, looks like last year you got it, or this year you got in there in May.
Oh yeah, no, we got in April, and the year before February we were on site. So it's the southern end of the triangle, particularly the silver is in a valley and it's pretty low lying. The gold's up on a bit of a higher ridge, so it's more your traditional northern project. But no, it's we could go year round. Many of our peers do. But for me, everyday camp is open as a cost. So we go 24 hours a day for about 6 months of the year. And we go big. We go with 5 rigs.
Well, in the case of Pretium and their Bruce Jack, they used to call it the 100 day dash, where they had to do all of their drilling in about 100 day period. So where you are gives you that advantage to extend that into 150 or 200 days.
And if you fly up to Terrace from Vancouver and if you were to chopper from the Terrace Airport out to our site, as you're flying over, you'll see the roads and you'll see the power, and it comes right into Kitsault, right? And so what the old timers did is they had a single gauge rail line from the Torbert portal, right, down uh, to the fjord, which is Alice Arm, which kicks out to the Pacific Ocean. So what we've done is we've converted that rail line into a road. So we've got a 26-kilometer road from our deposits down to Tidewater. We what I did when I came into the company, and it like this was a strategic exercise. I didn't know how it was going to go. I didn't know if we were going to find more, if I didn't know we were going to be able to do the M&A. So the first thing I did is I bought the surface rights at Tidewater because I thought whoever's going to develop this, I didn't know we were going to be the ones doing all this work, right? And I thought to myself, if we own Tidewater, if we own the lots, the land, the right of way, the road, the SUP, whoever's going to develop this is going to have to come through us. And so that's before we really had any understanding of the geology, had any of the mineral deposits. That's all come after. We kind of built the cart before the horse, thinking, well, let's tie up the road, let's tie up the port, let's tie up everything that you're going to need. And what's great is there's so many different ways to go. You got Kitsault, which is a fully permitted site that's got BC Hydro linked
Right
in.
to it. Yeah.
It's a past producing moly silver mine. Just to the north of us, you've got Ascot's fully permitted 3,000 ton per, idle mill. You've got highways that cut to the side. So you got everything. And most importantly, you've got the Nishka, who have been a great partner. A third of our exploration team is from Nishka Nation. I'm an advisor to Nations Royalty. So we securitize the IBAs, which include royalties on Seabridge, KSM, Newmont's Brucejack, Ascot's Red Mountain, and Premier, and Kitsault Molly. And so, work very, very closely with the nation, and they're friends. We've got a business office here, Alan, where we got 75 people. There's different companies that are running around under Frank Justra's umbrella. It's the only office in Vancouver that I know where we've got at least 10% of the office crew is Indigenous, right?
Wow.
And we
Does
just
my heart good. I'm First Nations myself. So
and we
I
we did
love
the
to see that.
yeah, we did the deal where I'm also an advisor with the Selkirk First Nations, where we bought the Minto mine,
Oh,
right? And
wow.
and we didn't buy it. We advised Selkirk to buy it. So not only is Nishka 75% owners of Nations royalty, making Nations the largest Indigenous owned public company. Now we've got Selkirk, where Selkirk owns 20% of what is the largest Indigenous owned mining company.
Wow.
So and again, it goes back to Rob McLeod and Ryan Waymark, who were instrumental in not only Dolly's launch, but also the launch of both Nations Royalty and Selkirk, and also in partnership with Frank Justra and the whole team here at Fiore.
It reminds me a lot of what happened in Alaska with the native corporations and how I've always said to people, First Nations are a lot more entrepreneurial than people think, and by bringing them into the entire endeavor is reminding me a lot of the Alaska Indigenous people, and good on you guys. Thank you.
Well, but again, you talked about Catherine McLeod, and you look at her uncle, who's Rob's father, Ian. Ian was the campaign manager to Frank Calder, who was the first Indigenous elected in 1959. So a lot of the things that I've inherited here have come from really good relations. And I grew up in the city here, right? And it's different when you're up north. You need your neighbor. And regardless as if your neighbor is white or black or brown or
Whatever
whatever,
color.
when you're going through those harsh winters, and you've got the remoteness, and you need to work together. And it's a principle that I've been really loved learning. And I've loved to get to know Nishka, spiritual people, industrial people, creative, innovative. And so I actually am part of the BC Regional Mining Alliance, and we go
Oh
with
yeah, that's that thing around Kitsault, right?
well,
Is
what? Yeah, it's up in the triangle. So it was. I'm going to give credit to Kelly Earl, who was with Skeena, who was one of the founders of it, and Kelly and Rob McLeod and some others got the government to put up $1 million to promote that BC is open for business. And so I'll go with my Nishka partners and maybe a deputy minister from the government, and we'll go to different places like Beaver Creek or New York or London, England, and we'll sit across a fund manager and say, what are your concerns? Is it permitting timelines? Is it certainty that our First Nations partner wants the project? What are your concerns? Because I've got the government here, I've got my nation here, I'm corporation. What questions do you have for us?
You're putting it all together. Another thing that's always been a dream of mine is that, I often tell this story about my great grandfather who had a trap line for 50 years. And if you ever had brought a piece of rock to him and said, "Have you ever seen this?" He would take you to the exact spot, even if he had seen it 20 years prior. And why I bring this up is that I believe that the indigenous youth have a inherent talents that I wish the mining industry used more of, to teach them how to be prospectors, to go around and do that old-fashioned geology where you walk around, you look down, show them the rocks they're looking for. So if you've got any initiatives on that and you need
Well, we
a First Nations guy to champion it, I'd love to be part of that, Sean.
be part of it because we're going up to the schools in February. And one of the things I've learned is First Nations groups, like any groups, like there's no, like I talked about earlier, there's no shortage of resources, right? But we all need purpose, right? We all need for the youth to have, and we need to mentor, we need to train, we need to teach. I know my kids need it, right? And I needed it, and I still need it. So no, it's something that, in areas to improve upon. It's one of my challenges for 2026 where and it's because of Kim Azak, who's a friend, who's part, she's from the nation, from Nisga'a Nation, and she's done some work with us. She's been working up for Snowline the last few seasons with Scott Burdell, and he's got a great team and a great discovery going there. But Kim's come to me, and she's been a big sister and a teacher to say, Sean,
Oh,
you
I
need,
follow her on X. She
yeah,
she had some problems with
she
her,
did.
and
She
she
did.
came back like a champion.
She's a strong, and so she's been one of my teachers, and I'm listening and I'm following her guidance. And that's part of the reason that, look, we've raised a bunch of money, we made some discoveries, we made some acquisitions. We got to focus now on the communities.
Get those youth out there. Show them the rocks to look for. They'll be like a dog on a bone. I'm telling you, I think there's a untapped resource there, and I think it's fantastic for the youth to really sort of marry their traditional teachings and understandings. They would make for fantastic prospectors.
But and there's people that have gone before me where they've taught me that who better to tell you what valley to go across, where to put that power line than those who it's their land.
They've been
And
there for 10,000 years, man. They
who
got
better to guide you what season to start, what season to end, so, understand, and so I believe in win-win scenarios, and that's why, with Nations and Selkirk, and those are the principles we have at Dolly Varden. But you need a good partner,
yeah.
and Nishka's a good partner, and we're trying to be a good partner.
Well, it's the heritage of Frank Calder is ingrained in people like me and the Nishka, and he did a lot of great things. And I could talk to you for hours, Sean. You've been really kind with your time. We've spent an hour at it, and I want to do this again with you. I love hearing everything you're doing with the company and with your partners in the First Nations community. And if you ever need an old rockhound like me to promote the idea of youth getting out there on the ground and using their inherent talents, I'm available.
Okay, well, let's talk offline then.
Okay. Did you have any closing comments or did we cover it all?
I think we got it all. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. As always, folks, my shows are for information purposes only. I'm merely an idea generator who uses my 32 years of experience, having been mentored by great geologists, geophysicists, geochemists, to help find good stories for you to do your homework on. You always have to speak with your financial advisor, and I'm always promoting the idea of doing that homework. The main reason is it will make you a better investor, and you'll do your decision making based on facts and statistics and information instead of the daily fluctuations of gold or silver or the stock prices. And in my career, I've seen not only in the mining sector, it's those that do their homework that are the most successful. So be that kind of investor. Do your homework on Dolly Varden. They got a tremendous amount of data on their website. And yeah, do that homework. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.